Welcome to another episode of the Ultimate Freedom Teachings video series.
Hey, Robert here. In this video, I'm going to shift gears from what you're probably used to and what you've been seeing a lot from me lately. I'm not going to talk about the teachings, I'm not going to teach, I'm not going to play the role of coach, but I want to share a very personal story about how the teachings that I share were discovered, how they became real, how they became experiential, and part of why they're so unique and different from what is out there with so many people screaming, "Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me." And I'd like to start out again by telling you a story and see if there's something that you can identify with in it. Have you ever had a fantasy of wanting to have, let's say, a magical mentor? Somebody with very unusual skills or powers or abilities or access to truth with a capital T or whatever, who would take you under their wing and mentor you and help you to become a master too. Now, your language may be different, but I think you'll know what I mean. Have you ever had a desire for that, a fantasy for that, a hunger for that? Or if you're aware of the Harry Potter stories, did you have a wish that maybe there really was a Hogwarts and that maybe you really could get an invitation to it to learn how to be, use magic and to be a magical being and go to a special school like that? In ancient times, there were things called mystery schools where you could go and again, discover unknown, forbidden, rarely discussed, hidden knowledge kind of a thing and become very masterful at some aspect of the human experience, the human story. Well, I did. When I was younger, I always had that fantasy. I always had that hunger. I always had that hope that I'd find the magical mentor. I'd find the magical school. I'd find the wizard, whatever, that would see something special in me and take me under his or her wing and mentor me, and however long it took. And I always was reminded of that when I'd read a story like that, whether it was a novel or it was a nonfiction story. As you may or may not know, in the last few years I went to China twice in order to teach. And as part of preparation for that, I did a lot of reading about ancient China and modern China, and I'd done reading on it many, many years ago too, especially about what's called the Taoist teachings. And that's something that I would see all the time, is that there were these systems of Taoist teachings, and there were masters, and there were apprentices. And sometimes an apprentice became an apprentice at age 9 or 10, very young, and apprenticed themselves to this master who would train them and teach them and guide them along this path to become whatever, magical, masterful, and whatever the particular system was. And it had such an appeal to me. And it never happened. It never happened. There was never in my story the magical external mentor. There was never the external school. Certainly I got puzzle pieces and I got interesting things that integrated themselves into what I was teaching from particular individuals, but the vast majority of what happened in my case, how the teachings were born, how they became experiential, how I ended up teaching them in very unusual ways, because that's been one of the things I've been blessed with. Very, very unique content presented in very unique ways. And I had that hunger, and then it didn't happen, and I had to say, okay, it's just not going to happen for me, not part of my story or whatever. And then I had a really interesting insight, because there never was an external mentor or teacher or master or school, but the same exact thing happened. It's just that it was inside of me. And I realize that a lot of people can poke fun and say, oh, Robert hears voices, or whatever else it is. But the reality is, if I had an external mentor or teacher or master, I would have seen them. I would have felt their presence. They would have pointed things to me. They would have taught me things. They would have set up experiences for me to have to create changes. So there would have been an experience with this individual who was guiding and leading and supporting and teaching and opening doors and gateways to things. And I realized one day, looking back, that while it never happened in an external sense, the same exact thing happened in an internal sense. It was almost like there was a master, a guru, a teacher, whatever that you want to call it, inside of me that was talking to me and was pointing things out about what was going on inside of me thoughts, feelings, sensations, what was going on outside of me that was facilitating changes inside of me and outside of me, and talking to me about them and narrating them and showing me things. And it was the same exact kind of a relationship, except it was inside, not outside. And it wasn't like reading a book. It wasn't like going to a workshop and just listening to somebody, a seminar or whatever. It was very, very experiential, because everything was based on what was actually happening in my own direct experience day to day. And what I now call our experience, if you look at what happens in our lives all day long, there's only two things that happen. And in my language, there's stuff that happens in inner space, which is inside of you. There's stuff that happens in story space, which is outside of you, including your body. And then there's the dance and the intermingling of the two happening at the same time. And that's what's happening all day long. There's a lot about this in the Ultimate Freedom teachings. And so there was this amazing dance orchestrated and choreographed by this inner mentor, this inner master, this inner teacher, that led me to the discovery of the teachings, and then dropping them down from ideas and concepts to experiences, and actually making changes inside of me as a result of what was happening. And outside of me, things began to change and ripple out too. But I thought to myself, I was reading a book the other day. A book had been recommended to me, and it was another one of these stories about a Taoist teacher in China hundreds of years ago, who took on an apprentice at age 9 of a young boy from a very wealthy family. And what happened with this young boy as he was apprenticed to this master and went to this very special mountain to teach. And the reason I'm doing this video is because these insights really became clear to me as I was reading that book a few weeks ago, is that I really realized for the first time with crystal clarity that what I always wanted, and what you may have wanted and hungered for and kept hoping would happen to me but did, it's just that it happened to me in a different way. And so I'm sharing this with you so that you can get a little bit more of a glimpse into how the teachings that I share were discovered, again, why they are so experiential and relate to your direct experience versus theory, philosophy, ideas, concepts, and such. And also because if you had a similar desire, if you've had a hunger, if you've been frustrated because you never found this magical person, so to speak, outside of you, it's possible that your journey has been similar to mine in a way, whether you ended up writing or speaking or teaching or coaching like I do or not, that there's been this inner mentor for you. And this inner master, this inner whatever, or if it hasn't happened yet, it may happen for you. And it doesn't make any difference. It's the same thing. Ultimately, mentoring is mentoring. A master and apprentice is a master and apprentice. It doesn't matter if there's an outside component, an outside individual, or it's all happening inside of you. Again, when this was happening to me, there was the very clear presence of whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't say person, but you could say person or being or energy or intelligence or whatever else it was that was systematically every day, all day long, guiding me, showing me things, pointing things out that were happening with my thoughts, my feelings, my sensations, happening in story space out in the world with my body, and then the dance and the intermingling. And when there were problems or challenges or stress or negative emotions or whatever, negativity, whatever it was, the same patterns repeating, there was this inner mentor, there was this inner teacher that was constantly there, narrating and talking and teaching and helping me to see with a capital S, meaning the truth with a capital T of things, and then actually making shifts, which is the big difference, and what cannot happen necessarily, although there are some stories of it, with an outer mentor. They can't really make a shift inside of you necessarily. It happens sometimes, if you may have read stories like that. But that's what happened with me too, is that this mentor was not only showing and teaching and revealing truth with a capital T, but was simultaneously, over time, making changes, deep, profound, personal, and permanent changes inside of me and outside of me that led to where I am now, to sharing the teachings and being able to share something so unique in such a unique way. So that's my share for today. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it inspiring. Perhaps there were some ahas or light bulbs that went off. If you've had a similar desire, or you've had this inner mentor or whatever and never really realized the significance of it, like I didn't for so long, and stared me in the face every day for decades, but I never saw it so clearly until recently when I was reading that book. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching. I'll look forward to our next form of contact, whatever shape that takes. And by the way, if you did have a hunger, if you do have a hunger, if there's something in a specific way about your journey that this touched, Please leave a comment or a share or something wherever it is that you're watching this video or listening to an audio version of it. If it's possible, I'd really appreciate it. I'd love to hear your story too. Okay, bye-bye for now.
If you'd like to get more information on what you just discovered, go ahead and click on the Learn More button that you'll see appearing in a few seconds.